Have you noticed your loved one asking the same question over and over again, even after you've answered it just moments before? Have they suddenly forgotten the name of someone they've known for years, maybe even a grandchild's name, or the title of their favorite book? Perhaps it was just a fleeting moment, a mental hiccup. Nothing to worry about, you tell yourself. We all forget things from time to time. It's part of getting older, right? But then it happens again and again. You find them standing in the kitchen, confused about what they came in for. You walk into the room and they're staring at the television remote like it's a foreign object, unsure of how to change the channel. They tell you a story they told just yesterday, convinced it's the first time. You laugh it off at first. They do too. But inside, there's a quiet worry growing. It could be nothing. Or it could be the beginning of something you never expected. Something difficult. Something no one wants to talk about until it's staring them in the face. Dementia doesn't always arrive with a dramatic entrance. It often slips in gently, almost silently, masked as forgetfulness, fatigue, or moodiness. It begins in whispers, not shouts. And if you're not watching, if you're not aware, you might miss the early signs entirely. But here's the truth: early detection can change everything. For you, for them, for your entire family. That's why, in this video, we're going to walk slowly and carefully through 5 subtle yet powerful signs that may point to the early stages of dementia in seniors. Signs that so many people ignore until it's too late. This isn't about fear. It's about love. It's about awareness. It's about catching what matters before it slips through your fingers. Because behind every one of these signs is a story, a person, a life that deserves attention, care, and dignity. Today, we're exploring 5 early signs of dementia that are often missed, but that you shouldn't ignore. And trust me, the last one might just surprise you. Sign number 1, memory lapses beyond normal. Have you ever forgotten where you left your keys? Or walked into a room and stood there, puzzled, wondering why you went in the first place? Of course you have. We all have. It's part of life, and it happens more as we get older. That's normal. But what if you begin noticing something different? Not just a missed appointment here or there, but a pattern. A consistent struggle to recall recently learned information. Like forgetting the details of a conversation they just had. Or asking the same question 3 times in one afternoon with no memory of having asked it before. It might start small. It usually does. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 67. Retired a few years ago. Loves gardening, baking banana bread, and taking long morning walks in the park near her home. Her daughter, Emily, noticed she'd been misplacing things more often. Her reading glasses, her phone, the remote control. That didn't raise any red flags. Felt like a natural part of slowing down. But then one day, Margaret called her daughter in tears. She had gone out for her usual walk and suddenly didn't recognize where she was. She had taken the same path for 10 years. She knew every tree, every bench, every stretch of sidewalk. But that morning, it all looked unfamiliar. She panicked. And even when she got home safely, she couldn't remember how she found her way back. That's when Emily knew it wasn't just forgetfulness. It was something else. Something deeper. Dr. Anita Shah, a neurologist who has spent over 2 decades working with aging adults, once said, "The earliest signs of dementia often appear as disruptions in short-term memory. When someone begins to forget events that just occurred, like what they had for breakfast or that a friend called 5 minutes ago, we take that seriously." The brain forms and stores short-term memories in the hippocampus, which is one of the first areas affected in most forms of dementia. So what does this look like in real life? Picture this: your loved one remembers all the details of a family vacation from 20 years ago, but can't recall the name of the movie you watched together last night. Or they tell you they paid the electric bill, but you find the envelope unopened on the kitchen counter. Or maybe they look you in the eye and ask you something important, then ask again just 10 minutes later with no hint of recognition that you already talked about it. You see, this isn't just about forgetting. It's about patterns, consistency. The brain struggling to keep up with the present even as it clings tightly to the past. Now here's the hard part: when this starts to happen, it can be brushed off so easily. "I'm just tired. My mind's been all over the place lately." Or the classic, "I'm just getting old." But memory lapses that go beyond the occasional slip when they start to interfere with daily life deserve attention. They deserve kindness, patience, and most importantly, action. This isn't about panic. It's about paying attention, being aware, noticing when something small starts becoming something persistent. Have you noticed anything like this in someone you love? Or maybe even in yourself? You're not alone. And bringing it into the light might just be the first step toward getting help, support, and understanding. Sign number 2, difficulty completing familiar tasks. Let's talk about something that cuts a little deeper, not because it's louder or more dramatic, but because it quietly steals the things we once did without thinking. The routines. The simple, everyday tasks that form the rhythm of a life. You know, the ones: cooking a favorite meal, writing out a birthday card, managing bills, taking daily medications, setting the coffee pot the night before. Familiar things. Things we've done so many times, they become second nature. But what happens when those things begin to feel unfamiliar? When steps that used to flow easily now seem confusing or overwhelming? I remember a message we got from a woman named Denise. Her voice cracked in the voicemail. She said, "I knew something was wrong the moment I watched my husband, a retired accountant, sit down with our bills and just stare. The paper was in front of him. The calculator was in his hand. But he didn't know where to start. It was like watching someone trying to read a language they once knew but had forgotten. And it wasn't just the bills. One evening, she found him in the kitchen, standing in front of the microwave with his cup of tea. The same tea he reheated every morning for 20 years. But that morning, he couldn't remember how. His hand hovered over the buttons, his eyes searching them like he'd never seen them before. That's the part no one talks about enough. The quiet heartbreak. Watching someone you love stare blankly at a machine they once used effortlessly. Watching the frustration rise in their eyes. The silence. The shame. And then, worse, the moment they laugh it off because the alternative is too frightening to admit. A viewer named Tom left a comment that stopped me in my tracks. He wrote, "My dad was always the chef in our family. Sunday dinners were his thing. But last Thanksgiving, he stood over the stove and didn't know what to do with the turkey. He asked me how long it needed to cook, and I reminded him like always. But he asked again. And again. And that's when it hit me, he wasn't just having a bad day. He was slipping away. Familiar tasks becoming unfamiliar, especially ones tied to identity or daily routine, can be a red flag. Not just because they're frustrating, but because they touch something deeper. They affect confidence, independence, dignity. And when a person begins to pull away from those tasks, when they stop cooking, stop handling the mail, stop taking medications on time, it's easy to misinterpret it. You might think they're just tired, or that they're letting themselves go. But more often than not, it's because they're overwhelmed, confused, afraid of making a mistake. So if you've seen someone you love struggle with a task they once did with ease, if you've caught them hesitating in front of the stove, or fumbling with a pillbox they've used for years, pause. Ask questions, not with fear, but with compassion. Because those moments, however small, could be whispering something much bigger. And hearing those whispers early can make all the difference. Let's move forward. The next sign is often mistaken for something else entirely, and it's one of the most overlooked. Sign number 3, confusion with time or place. Sometimes the signs don't come through what they say or do, but in where they are or where they think they are. One of the most heartbreaking indicators of early dementia is confusion about time or place. And it rarely shows up all at once. It begins quietly, gradually, almost gently. At first, it might be small. They forget what day of the week it is, or they confuse Monday with Friday. That seems harmless, right? We all do it. But then it becomes more frequent. They forget the month or the season. They step outside in January without a coat or ask if Thanksgiving is coming next week when it just passed. They wake up and think it's morning, but it's really evening. The timeline of their life starts to fray. Then something even more concerning begins to unfold. They start getting lost. Not just in new places, but in familiar ones. Their own neighborhood. The street they've lived on for decades. Maybe they're out for a walk like they always are, and suddenly they stop. They don't know which way to turn. They don't know which house is theirs. That's not just forgetfulness. That's disorientation. And that's something we can't ignore. There's a man named Paul, 72 years old. He used to take his dog, Max, on the same trail behind his house every morning. Rain or shine, he knew every bend, every tree, even the old wooden sign at the halfway point. But one morning, he didn't come home. His wife, Angela, called neighbors, then the police. He was found an hour later, a mile in the opposite direction, sitting on a bench, confused, holding Max's leash tightly. When asked what happened, Paul looked up and quietly said, "I thought I was going the right way." Then nothing looked familiar. That's the terrifying truth. Confusion with time and place isn't just frustrating. It's dangerous. It can lead to wandering, exposure, fear, and in worst-case scenarios, real harm. Now, I want to pause here and say this. There is help. There are resources. You're not alone in this. If you've noticed these signs in someone you love, memory clinics can offer evaluations, care plans, and early interventions. There are also apps available, simple ones designed for seniors that provide daily reminders, orientation prompts, even alerts if someone wanders too far from home. Tools like these can be lifelines, not just for the person struggling, but for the family trying to support them. This doesn't mean their independence ends today. It means we make small adjustments. We stay vigilant. We ask questions gently, not with panic, but with purpose. Because when time and place start slipping away, that's the moment we have to lean in closer. Not just to protect them, but to preserve the parts of them that still remember, still hope, still hold on. Now, as hard as the sign is to watch unfold, the next one hits even closer to the heart. It affects relationships, identity, emotion. Let's take a breath and keep going. Sign number 4, problems with words in speaking or writing. Have you ever had a word right on the tip of your tongue, but it just wouldn't come? You pause, you fumble, and eventually laugh it off. We all do that from time to time. But when it starts happening often, when someone consistently struggles to find everyday words or begins replacing them with vague or unusual descriptions, that's when we need to pay attention. Imagine sitting across from your dad at the kitchen table. He's telling a story like he always does, animated and smiling. Then suddenly, mid-sentence, he stops. His eyes squint a little, his hands gesture like he's reaching for something invisible, and he says, "You know, the cold thing with lights, the thing where we keep the milk." You realize he's trying to say refrigerator. That's what happened to Sarah, a woman who wrote in after watching one of our earlier videos. She said, "At first it was cute. We laughed. We thought he was just being funny. But when it started happening more, when he began avoiding conversations because he couldn't keep up, when he started calling the TV the picture box or couldn't remember the word for fork, we knew something wasn't right." This isn't just about forgetfulness. It's about losing access to the words that once came so naturally. Speaking becomes harder. Writing too. The sentence trails off. The thought evaporates. And what replaces it is frustration, embarrassment, silence. Dr. Melissa Grant, a speech-language pathologist who works with older adults, once explained it this way: for people in the early stages of dementia, the brain still wants to communicate. The desire is there, but the pathways that connect thought to language begin to break down. So the words don't come, or the wrong ones come instead. That's deeply frustrating and often isolating for the person experiencing it. And here's the emotional cost: conversations become shorter. Phone calls end sooner. They stop telling stories. They nod along rather than speak up. They fade into the background not because they don't care, but because it's just too hard to keep up. Too painful to try and fail. But I want to say this clearly and gently: if you're watching this and you've noticed these changes in someone you love or even in yourself, you are not alone. There are people who understand. Therapists who help. Communities who care. And the most powerful thing you can do in those moments? Be patient. Let the silence sit without shame. Let the pauses breathe. Let the person you love know that their voice still matters, even when it's slower, even when it's searching. Because in that space of patience, trust grows. And sometimes that's the bridge that keeps their dignity intact. Words connect us. They carry our memories, our humor, our love. So when words begin to falter, it can feel like the world is pulling away. But we don't have to let it. We can hold on together. Let's take a breath. Because the final sign might not be what you expect. And it often shows up before any of the others. Sign number 5. Changes in mood or personality. There's a moment that often gets overlooked. Not because it's quiet, but because it wears a disguise. It doesn't look like memory loss. It doesn't sound like confusion. It doesn't even come across as forgetfulness at first. It looks like mood, like personality, like someone simply acting different. But here's the thing. When someone you've known your whole life begins to change in ways you can't quite explain, it's more than just a bad day. It might be the earliest sign that something deeper is happening. Maybe they were always easygoing, laughing at life's little messes, shrugging off stress. And now, they snap over small things. They raise their voice at the mailman. They lose patience with the dog. They seem irritated all the time, even with you. You start thinking, this isn't them. What happened to their warmth? Their calm? Or maybe they start withdrawing. They stop attending family dinners. They avoid friends. They sit by themselves, eyes distant, hands fidgeting, lips tight. You ask what's wrong and they say nothing. But it's not nothing. Julia wrote in recently about her mother. After retiring at 68, she expected her mom to travel, to garden, to join the book club she always talked about. But instead, she grew quiet. Then anxious. Then paranoid. Julia shared it wasn't sadness. It was like a switch had flipped. One night, she called and said someone was watching her from across the street. But there was no one there. I thought she was joking, but her voice was trembling. It wasn't a joke. It was fear. That kind of shift isn't random. Dr. Adrian Marks, a behavioral neurologist, put it plainly, the brain doesn't just control memory. It also regulates emotion. So as dementia starts affecting areas responsible for mood, you'll often see changes in temperament. Irritability, depression, fear, suspicion, long before severe memory issues become obvious. And that's why this sign is so easy to miss, or worse, misjudge. We assume they're just going through something emotionally, that maybe they're being difficult, dramatic, or overly sensitive. But deep down, they might be scared, lost in feelings they don't understand. And when we respond with frustration or try to argue with their reality, it only makes that fear grow. So here's the hard but important truth. When someone's mood or personality begins to shift, the best thing we can do is respond, not react. If they're angry, stay calm. If they're fearful, reassure them. If they're withdrawn, reach out gently and often. And when they say something that doesn't make sense to you, don't correct, don't argue, just listen. Because what they need most in that moment isn't logic. It's love. It's safety. It's knowing that no matter how much they change, they're still seen, still valued. This is where compassion matters most. Not when things are easy, but when they're not. When the person you love begins to feel like someone else, hold onto the truth that they're still in there. And with patience, kindness, and support, you can help them feel less afraid, less alone. Now, if you've seen even one of these signs in someone close to you, please don't wait. Early awareness changes everything. It gives you time to plan, to support, to understand. And most importantly, it gives you time to love each other through what's ahead, not around it. And if this has resonated with you, if it reminded you of your mother, your father, your partner, your neighbor, I hope you'll share this video. Leave a comment. Tell your story. You never know who needs to hear it. Because every story, every voice helps another person feel a little less alone in the silence of uncertainty. If you've noticed any of these signs in a loved one or even in yourself, the first and most important thing to remember is that you are not alone. Many families face this challenge, and there are steps you can take to help both yourself and your loved one navigate this difficult journey. So, what should you do if you notice these signs? The very first step is communication. Don't let the silence stretch too long. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're unsure of how to approach the subject. But having an open, honest conversation is critical. If your loved one is exhibiting signs of confusion or memory loss, they might already feel embarrassed, anxious, or frightened. It's important to approach them with empathy, not judgment. Start with something gentle like, "I've noticed a few things recently and I just wanted to check in. How have you been feeling? Is there anything I can help with?" Keep it light, but be clear in your concern. This isn't about accusing or confronting them. This is about offering support and understanding. The next step is consulting a doctor. If you're seeing these signs more regularly, it's crucial to talk to a healthcare professional. A doctor can conduct tests, offer a proper diagnosis, and provide resources. Don't hesitate to reach out for medical consultation even if you're unsure. It's always better to be proactive and get a professional opinion, especially if early interventions could make a big difference in managing the condition. In addition to speaking with a doctor, one powerful tool is journaling. Keep track of the signs you're observing. The more detailed your observations, the better equipped your doctor will be to assess the situation. Write down things like when you notice memory lapses, any emotional changes, incidents of confusion, and how long they've been happening. This will help not only the doctor but also guide any necessary interventions down the road. Speaking of interventions, don't wait until things worsen. Early interventions can significantly improve quality of life. Simple changes like creating a more structured daily routine, using memory aids like calendars or reminders, or encouraging safe physical and mental activity can help slow down the progression. Occupational therapists or support groups can also offer invaluable assistance. Now, for your convenience, I've created a downloadable checklist that summarizes everything we've discussed today. It's a practical guide to help you stay on track. You can find it linked in the description below. This checklist will serve as a tool to help you stay organized and take the next step confidently. Remember, it's not about having all the answers right away. It's about taking that first step, then the next. And each step, no matter how small, is progress. Thank you for watching today. I hope this video has helped shed some light on the signs of dementia and the steps you can take to support your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe and share your stories in the comments below. Together, we can build a community of understanding, support, and hope.